Hello and welcome to the Yule mark.
Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. It's the Christmas episode.
It's the holiday episode and also the end of the year episode.
Yes, because that usually happens around Christmas.
It does. It's funny how every year too.
I know.
It's very interesting.
So
yeah.
So what's been going on?
Well, there's still a lot of stuff coming out of the midterm, and not just the results, but just what is the House going to do now that they're in power in January? And of course, one of the some of the chatter coming out is whether or not Pelosi is going to pursue impeachment with the president, and especially around that the illegal payments that the president made with campaign contributions to two of the women. So Stormy Daniels and the other woman's name I can't remember, but I was thinking about it earlier, trying to sort out what was the illegal deal. Wow, it must have been something really complicated. And John and I were talking about it, and it was just using campaign contributions to pay the women off. It wasn't even something really complicated. So,
but if you're like a successful multi-billionaire,
yes.
Why on earth are you using money like that? That's
right, because don't you just have gold bricks laying around the house?
Well, you at least have a couple of 100,000 lying around you could use in cash that's untraceable. I mean, goodness sake, who's his accountant?
It's a good question.
Wow.
But
here's the thing, though. I mean, weren't we all meant to sort of like find out finally about the Russia investigation? I mean, it seems that every time I turn on the news, it's like, and tomorrow Mueller will be doing something, and tomorrow never comes.
Well, I mean, you wonder if that other shoe on Russia is actually ever going to drop, and there's so much uncertainty around what Mueller's going to turn up, and it's the liberal dream that there's going to be some smoking gun, but of course that's not going to happen. You feel like with what's happening with the campaign contributions, it's going to be something really small.
If that's it, I mean, this seems like a placeholder. I mean, if you look at the strategy so far, if Mueller does a strategy, it's rolling up a RICO. I mean, basically, you start with the low person, you get them to flip on somebody
totally
higher,
true.
And you run the whole thing up, and then basically do its criminal conspiracy.
Yeah.
Now, how do I know so much about this? Because I live in Providence. And that's how they got Buddy Cianci.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, they didn't actually get Buddy for doing anything wrong himself.
Right.
They just got him as, well, given that you know everybody else and they're all bad, you're wrapped up in a RICO, you're part of a criminal conspiracy. So that's what it smells like to me. But I've always said, we've said this before, I think it's stunningly dangerous to try and do a RICO on the sitting president of the United States, who, regardless of what one thinks of him, has 40% of the country all fired up and in his corner. And if you can't do that, you're just basically doing all the stuff that Democrats criticized everyone for going after Clinton for.
Yes.
And this does not smell good.
No, and I think I 100% agree. I think impeachment is exactly the wrong route. I think the liberal Bernie Sanders left wants that to happen, but politically, there's no gain to it. It divides the country even more. I mean, I don't
think it's Bernie that's doing this. I think
it's the far left that really wants it.
No, I think it's basically the Pelosiites. I think it's the middle that are like, no, we got to get him because he took away our candidate.
Yeah. I feel like it's left because as a sort of, moderate, I guess Democrat, I'll come out. I do not want impeachment at all. It tears the country apart. It's awful.
So who wants it?
Well, that was but maybe
because I don't see Bernie jumping up and down screaming for this at all.
But I do wonder if Pelosi's appetite for this is less than it was too. Because I mean, if they actually want to move forward on infrastructure, I think that's maybe something they can work together on. I don't think
Aren't they about to shut down the government? I think that was the latest today, right? Yeah. So we'll be working on infrastructure to keep the government open once we don't build the wall. I think
that's right.
Okay, cool.
But does she want her speakership to be about the impeachment?
Well, I mean, let's just turn to this now, right? First of all, the last time I checked, she was 108 years old. And she managed to get rid of like various challenges.
Same age as Mitch McConnell.
Yeah, I know, but nonetheless, it's not about whether she's a woman or a man or whatever. It's like, can you boomers go away?
Well, yeah.
Just retire, for God's sake. Give somebody younger, maybe somebody about 60, the chance to govern.
Yeah.
I mean, enough already. Just go.
Yeah, and on the Senate side as well. I mean, Chuck Schumer. He's been minority leader for a long time, but I agree. I mean, just somebody younger, 60. Wow.
The picture of the three of them sitting in Trump's office today, sort of screaming at each other. It was like sort of a retirement home for like angry granddads. I mean, like, this is it? This is how we run things?
Yes. Well, it is actually.
Yes, it is actually. So.
And actually, that's a nice pivot point to how do we run things. If the state capital changes hands, as it did in Madison, Wisconsin, and as it did in North Carolina in the last election, the Republicans shrunk some of the powers of the governor.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a bit nasty, wasn't it?
Yeah. And in front, protesters, closed door meetings. I mean, it had whiffs of talking about Providence, of sort of the backdoor deals. And it's all legal as well. I guess the question is whether or not the new governor of Wisconsin will be able to enact some new reforms, replacing the old new reforms.
But it's just, again, it's on a state level, right? You've gotten to the point whereby you can have a change in the state house and people will basically use every tool they can to stop that person governing.
Yeah.
This is not healthy. I mean, what damage can they do? I mean, I don't think the Democratic governor of coming into Wisconsin wants to socialize all property and drain blood from children. I mean, it's not like exactly the most radical agenda, but oh my God, we must make sure that they can do nothing. This is not good, not healthy.
And especially at the state level where so much is actually done. I mean, we just think about the federal government when, big stuff happens every 500 years, but the state government real stuff happens that impacts people and impacts people's lives in pretty significant ways. And so to think about that, the gamesmanship it makes you even more jaded than you already are.
But speaking of gamesmanship, what about the incredibly deft hand, or is it deaf ear, that Theresa May has been pulling since the last time we spoke about Brexit?
I mean, talk about 3-dimensional chess.
12-dimensional chess.
I mean, so...
Played by drunk people with blindfolds.
Well, I mean, there's so many updates on what's happening.
I've got updates on the updates.
Right.
So the last time we spoke, there was a deal. And her play was to say to everyone, look, we have a deal. And we have a deal in the sense that the European side, because remember, it's a bargain. There's two sides to this. They said, look, this is as much as we'll give. And she went, okay, we can live with that. And we can live with that because basically it's a fudge. It allows them a little bit more time. And it doesn't actually call time on the Irish border issue. And I've said before, this is the key thing. You can't be half pregnant, right? Either you're in a customs union and there's no border, or you're not in a customs union and there's a border. You can't be halfway. And what Theresa was trying to get everyone to buy into was some kind of fantasy whereby it was true, but it wasn't true at the same time. I think one of my 7-year-old's books has this plot. But anyway, lots of people then said this isn't going to work. And it was a broadside launched by Mervyn King, the excellently named Mervyn King, who sounds like some kind of Welsh wizard, who used to run the Bank of England. And Mervyn did this broadside where he correctly said, so let me get this straight. What you've got here is a deal that nobody wants. It's going to cost you about 39 billion. That gives you less than what you've got just now. And you can't even specify if it's actually worse than leaving with no deal at all. That's just not going to work. So she kept saying, no, I'm going to go forward with the vote. But then it was perfectly obvious he was going to lose the vote. So now there's no vote. And that means she's going to go back to Europe, who have said, well, we're not going to renegotiate.
Yes.
And we're going to have a new series of negotiations as she tries to, quote unquote, seek guarantees. About what? About the virtual status of a border that can't exist?
But I wondered if she was playing in the 12-dimensional chess, was she telling people to not vote for it in Parliament as a way to get more concessions out of the EU?
But the EU aren't going to give you any more concessions. They don't have to give you anything.
That's who's in the driver's seat, the EU or the UK?
It's never been the UK. I've decided to leave a club. The club had benefits. As I'm on the way out the door, I'd like to negotiate what I still get from the club. No, just no.
But isn't the EU weakened if the UK leaves? And I mean, do they want...
Well, it's never really been in. I mean, this is something else I've said. Think about it. It's never going to join the euro.
Yeah.
It has its own currency. It lives off a giant financial sector that trades euros and dollars and pounds. And the last thing it wants is a tighter set of European regulations on finance or anything else. So it's kind of always been present, but never fully in. And what we're seeing now in Europe as a whole, if you think about the way that Brussels and the Italians have not really faced off and things going on, it is a kind of federal project. It's a kind of incipient federalism, and the Brits never belonged in that. So, they are where they are for various reasons, but the deal they're trying to strike is literally an impossible deal. You can't do that. It's not going to work.
I mean, it looked like the best scenario out of one of the diagrams I saw was that the UK ends up in some sort of like Norway type position. But is there...
But the thing is, the EU is not going to give you that.
That's what I wondered. Is there any concession that will allow that the EU will allow to violate any of those 4 freedoms?
No, absolutely not. The 4 freedoms are Europe. So the notion that you can basically buffet, cherry pick the 4 freedoms, it's just, no, it's not going to happen. So you end up with a fudge and an imaginary fantasy border.
And if you don't, and if you allow someone to violate it, then you've set the precedent, right?
Exactly. And then the Hungarians and the Poles and everybody else kick off in migration. Yeah. You lose freedom of movement. After you lose freedom of movement, and capital controls, and the whole thing unravels. So no.
Right. More excitement in Europe. I don't know. There's Macron, the man of the leader of the rich.
Exactly.
Like that can be the title for so many world leaders. But the Yellow Jackets really having their voices be heard.
Totally. But what's interesting about the Yellow Jackets, apart from the fact that they sting, haven't seen that one used in the press yet. But anyway, so the interesting thing about this is it's actually kind of proving what we're increasingly seeing in the actual research on the phenomena of why everybody's so pissed off in populism, or whatever you want to call it, right? And the emerging sort of consensus is this: it's actually not all culture or all economics, right? What it is urban-rural. And what's happened, if you look at the US data, but it's also apparently true for France and there's parallel studies, is that up until about the 1980s, if you lived in a mid-sized town, small city, and you had manufacturing, it was connected to other manufacturing spaces. So think about the way that Illinois and other states used to be configured, right? And that was awesome. And you actually had above-trend wage growth, and you had cheaper costs. So your real wage was fabby. So these were good places to live. Then what happens is deindustrialization, globalization, Chinese trade import, impact, globalization, the whole thing, right? Boom, those cities get killed. Then you simultaneously get a shift to the service sector economy, which is split 80-20. 20% seriously well-paid jobs, 80% seriously badly paid jobs. And they all go into cities. So all the growth ends up in cities for 20 years. And then everybody else is basically on the skids. So this is the sort of the general picture you see right across the sort of the Western European, North American landscape. And you can tap into that, all of the cultural variables and all the rest of it you want, but that seems to be what's driving it. So one of the comments from the Yellow Jackets, which I thought was interesting, was immediately was like, oh, they're being hijacked by the nationalists or whatever. And no, they're completely decentralized. This is not it. Kicks off over a fuel tax. Well, why is that? Because they don't believe in global warming. No, one of them said the following: of course we care about the environment, but why should we be the ones that have to pay for it? Particularly, and this is the bit that carried on, particularly when Macron hands out with people whose yachts, when they leave the harbour, put hundreds of tons of carbon out, and we're the ones who are paying for this. So what's going on with that? And there is this recognition that, no, we know what's going on. You represent not us, right? You said you would represent us, but you don't. So at the time, I called Macron a centrist populist, which is just an empty signifier, and he's just been bust for being exactly that.
Well, I think that I had heard something similar about, maybe not the yacht, but the airplane illustration that, if you fly essentially more than one flight a year, and you it offsets anything that you might be doing at home, which is like not eating meat or meatless Mondays, whatever, what have you. And so I just thought that was such an interesting point too, of Macron just being his feet being held to the fire on who do you represent.
So I was in Europe last week, and one of my friends, Jonathan Hopkins, sorry for calling you out, Jonathan, I'm pretty sure it was him who told me this. There was a study in France that showed that it's some amazing number, like a third of all French people in the labour market commute 30 kilometres each way a day. Now, think about the fact that you've got a fuel tax on doing 60 clicks a day, which is about 45 miles. So you're just basically taking $10 out of everybody's pocket the minute they get in the car every day, in what is for most people a low-wage economy.
Yes.
No. And when you write that law, you're like, oh, that's nothing. People can afford that. It's like, no, they really can't.
No, the question of how do I get ahead hangs there, and no one's answering that question in any way that feels genuine.
But exactly, because at the end of the day, whether it's Macron, whether it's politics here bought by the Mercers, whether it's dark money, whether it's, the financing of UKIP and Brexit, the whole thing, we've generated trillions and trillions of dollars of wealth over the past 25 years, and it's all gone to a tiny sliver of humanity who effectively control or seek to control our politics. It's that simple.
It is, and yet we think, just to bring it back to the U.S. for a second, you look at the base for the president, and I mean, it's just the mismatch between supporting someone who's a billionaire and seeing their wages and seeing where they are in terms of their family incomes. Hard pivot to, I mean, as we think about the close of 2018. That this has been the worst year for gun fatalities in terms of public shootings, and will we, with a Democratic Congress, get any sort of sensible legislation? I think the answer around the table was no. There's just no incentive for this, and no one on either side of the aisle is particularly interested in this. And it's one of those issues that you just want to kind of just sit down and just cry, because there's no incentive, and yet there's such huge incentives. I mean, the public wants it, and yet the people in power, back to your point, Blyth, are just seemingly uninterested.
So what is it? It's basically 70% of people in opinion polls, time after time, basically want nobody wants to take all your guns. It's not true. That basically some kind of relatively reasonable gun control. But what we know from the work of a political scientist called Mark Gillens and all the people who have replicated his studies is that Congress and your local parliament, wherever you live in Europe or elsewhere, really doesn't give a damn about what the person in the middle thinks.
Yeah.
They produce policies that suit the preferences of the top 20% of income earners. That's it.
Yeah.
So if the top 20% cared about this, it would happen. Yeah. But they don't, so it doesn't.
Yeah. And it's so, it just makes you want to not show up in terms of political participation, because you just wonder, how is my voice being heard? I feel like I should wear a yellow jacket right now.
Exactly. No, in a sense, we're all yellow jackets.
Yeah.
We are all yellow jackets.
Yeah.
It's just a question, this is something that Eric Lonergan, I'm calling it everybody to do. My friend Eric Lonergan and I have been kicking around a manuscript for about a year, if not more. And it's funny, it's evolved over time. And what it's come down to now is the 4 types of anger that we see expressed. And we're trying to sort of write about the different forms of anger, legitimate anger, illegitimate, etc. But, what's driving it? Why are we all so pissed off? And it's a real shame, because in a sense, the world's never been wealthier. And yet we've never been more unhappy with the distribution of it. And never been more confused about what's really driving it.
Yeah. Illegitimate anger sounds very interesting to me.
Well, exactly.
Yeah, well, I'm going to pick up the book when
you will.
it gets
If
published.
it ever sees the light of day, we'll see. We're trying.
There's more news in Europe, though.
There is, of course, because this is what the end of the year thing.
Yeah,
right?
it is.
This is the sort of and at the end of the year, we're going to say goodbye to the people that left us in 2018. Yes. And someone who's left us in 2018 is
Angela Merkel. Cue the harpsichord.
Do you ever get the feeling that she just went, "Oh, fuck this, I'm done"?
Right, seriously. I've had enough
of you people. I've tried my best, and you're a bunch of shits, and I'm done with you.
Next to Donald Trump
That's
anymore.
it, and we're done it. That's it. I'm done.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm off. I've tried my best. You people are morons. I've had enough of it. And that's basically what she's done. But interestingly, she's managed to find someone called Annegret I can never say this. Kramp-Karrenbauer. And basically she's mini Merkel.
Wow.
Yeah, so she's found mini Merkel. Now that's a bit of a problem, because her own party doesn't like her anymore. So when you put mini-me into the party doesn't like anymore, they don't like her anymore either.
Yeah.
So they're hemorrhaging conservatives, which means that the CDU sort of moves more into the centre, which you might like, but then the SPD's dying, so they're not a reliable partner, which re-energizes the right. So, her nomination/election beatification might actually be more degenerative than regenerative for German politics, which is probably not what anybody needs at this point, particularly with Macron flailing on the ropes.
It seems like a big deal that her successor is a woman, but I thought that was interesting in the media, at least the U.S. media. It wasn't made out to be a big deal. I mean, we're still fighting this fight from 2016 around gender. So I thought that was just an interesting perspective to me, that there wasn't even real talk about whether it be a man or a woman, and it was who it was.
It's pretty much I mean, Theresa May runs Britain badly, understandably, given who she's got to work with. with, but and women politicians are. We talked about Nancy Pelosi
Yeah.
earlier on,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
I mean, she's been around long enough now that if she retired, she would have had a 50-year career in politics.
Yes.
So
yes.
I think the backward mirror on 2016 might be a bit strange in that regard.
Well, yes, it is. Though the theme continues in 2018, the record number of women.
Right,
So
exactly.
it was just an interesting contrast, just in the way that even the press on Theresa May is not that it's genderized, or
Right.
that the men booing her yesterday
And
were.
it never is. I mean, when Mrs. Thatcher was around, I mean, when she was first elected, they wanted, she's a woman.
Yeah.
And Thatcher herself was sort of like, yes, congratulations. You've noticed this. Now, can we move on?
Yes, very much so. At the end of the year, I was thinking about sort of what to look forward for 2019. I guess mine was the jostling for the 2020 Democratic presidential nomination, and already the names.
Sorry, you look forward to this?
Well, because I love the horse race,
All
and
right,
this will
fair
surprise nobody. But the names that have dropped on and off the list, I think that'll be the thing that I'll be looking for. I mean, does it go to 400 names, which it probably is right now? And when does the top actually become the top? Because I think the campaign was, of course, it's already started, but really begins in earnest in June.
So I think for next year, I'm looking forward to the bit when we actually start taking climate change seriously. And it might have happened because at this big meeting in Poland that they're all at, what happened was the global pension fund industry showed up and basically said, look, see all the things that you want us to do to fund your pensions? We do that by buying equities in your corporations. And your corporations are basically the top, I think it's 105 corporations in the world that produce 90% of the carbon, et cetera, et cetera. Not by market cap, but there's a specific number of them. And basically they've noticed there's a phenomenon that could happen called stranded assets, which is essentially people or companies that produce tons and tons of carbon output could become sort of economically dangerous and eventually get regulated out of existence, at which point if you're actually, holding their stock, you got a big problem. So think about GM's move the other week, right? We're shutting down some plants. We're just going fully into electric. Why? Because they know that the internal combustion engine's got about 10 years left.
Right.
So I need to get ahead of this now if I'm going to survive. Otherwise, GM stockholders are going to get completely busted. So these guys walked in. They run trillions of dollars of assets. They walked in the meeting and said, you really need to start taking this seriously, because if our assets go to zero, nobody gets a pension.
Yeah, geez.
Yeah,
Oh.
right. Time to wake up, folks.
Yeah.
Now-
and that's connected to real today dollars.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, hopefully we start to see the emergence. This is why I want Nancy and her people to go. They don't care. They don't get how serious this is. They need to go. They need to move on, so that we can get people who actually will be around long enough to see the consequences of their inaction.
Yeah. I hear you, just in terms of the immediacy of the issue.
It's now.
Right.
It's like
Right.
we have about 15 years to do something on climate and about 15 years to do something on inequality.
Yeah.
And if we don't start now, we won't get there in 15 years. And then really, really bad stuff happens.
Will there be snow?
Well, no. Or maybe there will be.
Yes.
Maybe it'll be a kind of like ash falling from the sky
Yeah.
rather than the snow.
Like an all
But we'll see. We'll
Yeah.
see. We'll see if there'll
Yeah.
be snow. But let's end with a happy Christmas. note.
Yes.
One of the things that I love to do, because I'm kind of the family Grinch basically, bah humbug,
Don't know
is
that surprises anybody.
I know exactly. So the tree's up, and the mulled wine is we don't do.
But
mulled
your
wine.
wife is German, so it must
Oh no,
just
she
be,
loves
I
all
mean,
this stuff.
Your
Absolutely,
house is like
you
all
know.
decked out.
Yeah, it totally is, right? So, but one of the things is it then comes on the Christmas song list.
Yeah.
And one of the favorites in the Christmas song list is, can you guess?
Baby, it's cold outside.
Absolutely.
Me too. Hashtag me too.
Well, that's it. I mean, suddenly, this is possibly one of my favorite Christmas songs.
Your hands, they're just like ice.
My mother will start to worry.
Beautiful, what's your
My
hurry?
father will be pacing the floor.
Listen to the fireplace
So
roar.
really, I'd better scurry.
Beautiful, please don't
Well,
hurry.
maybe just a half a drink more.
But if you listen to the song is basically two people playing with each other, and it's all just been dramatized as, no, he's holding her down and
But I
murdering
want to
her.
go home. No, stay for a little while longer.
I encourage you to listen to the song in the way that it's sung. I think there was a comment from Dean Martin's daughter saying
yeah.
basically, if my dad was alive to hear this, his head would explode.
Yeah.
So,
I know it is a classic. It's really getting tied up in the moment.
Oh my God, absolutely. And it's such a good song because most Christmas songs suck.
Yes.
If you
yeah.
take this away, there's nothing left.
Got nothing.
There's nothing left.
Yeah. Have another glass of mulled wine.
Oh God, please. Absolutely. And then sing, I don't know what, Good King Wenceslas? Oh.
Well, Well, to round things out, thank you so much to the podcast team here of Alex and John, and welcome to our new engineer, Dan. We will see you in the new year.
Yes, we will. We hope. Till then, be safe, don't swim with sharks, and make sure that your relatives are your relatives.